yards from here. The 38 delegates, who came from 11 countries, were conducted out from Bern on horseback. As conspirators, they were in good form. They were not told of their destination, though they repeatedly inquired. And the local citizens heard they were ornithologists, bird watchers. And according to legend, they encouraged this suspicion. The birds, as they looked back at these bird watchers, Lenin, Trotsky, Zinoviev, Radek, were amazed. After 2 hours, saddle sore, they came in sight of the village. The conference was due to start at 4 o'clock that afternoon. I've often thought we should understand conferences better than we do. They're only rarely to exchange information, reach decisions. Much more often they're to proclaim shared goals, to show the participants that they're not alone, and therefore to improve the morale of the conferees. And most often of all, they are to simulate action under circumstances where no action is possible, to show the participants, and maybe other people as well, that something is happening when in fact nothing is happening. The meeting of the militant Social Democrats here in Simmerthwald in September 1915 had quite a few of these latter purposes. The question was how workers should react to the war, obviously. Lenin's position was very much as before. Workers of different countries were not enemies. All had enemies in common: the Tsar, the other rulers, and the capitalists. Let them therefore turn their guns on these enemies and not on each other. He argued his case, I think we can be sure, with energy and force, but without success. Only a handful supported him. National feeling was still strong. There was some simple pacifism. And most of all, the delegates had to be cautious. Ornithologists or not, they had to go home. So, as in 1914, Lenin was still isolated, still marching by himself. He went back to Bern in a state of deep depression, back to work in the library.
In the autumn of 1915, we sat in the libraries more diligently than ever, but all this could not remove the feeling of being cooped up in this democratic cage. Somewhere beyond, a revolutionary struggle was mounting. Life was astir, but it was also far away. The question of imperialism, its economic essence, the exploitation of the colonies arose in all their magnitude. It is on these questions that Ilyich worked at the end of 1915 and in 1916, gathering materials for his pamphlet, Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism.
Lenin's theory of imperialism was perhaps his most compelling contribution to revolutionary thought. It's not an impressive document. Much of it is from J.A. Hobson, the English social reformer, as Lenin concedes. The theory held that half a century earlier, European capitalism had reached its peak, as our economic landscape shows. Then, instead of collapsing, as Marx had foretold, capitalism had grown stronger. It had been saved from the scheduled collapse by investment, development, exploitation in the colonial world. British, French, and German workers reaped some of the benefit. They were in effect standing on the backs of the colonial peoples. Colonies meant survival for capitalism, and so out of the struggle for capitalist survival had come the present war. there was an even more breathtaking consequence. Socialism had previously been thought principally relevant to the workers in the advanced countries of the West. They had reached the stage of social development where they might reasonably be expected to take over. With Lenin, revolution became a matter of the utmost importance to the rest of the world. Only the revolution would get the Western capitalists and the Western workers off the backs of the peasant masses of Africa, China, India, Indonesia, or wherever. Lenin took the revolution to Russia, and in a very real sense, he sent it on to China. Outside of neutral Switzerland, the slaughter went on and on. In June 1916, the year of the most sanguinary slaughter in the West, Lenin completed imperialism. That April, he had thought it time for another use of his second weapon, the conference. This time they met in more remote Kiental. The socialists of the warring nations still had to be convinced that the workers must follow Lenin in turning the guns on their own ruling classes. But 12 instead of 8 delegates now supported Lenin, a modest though perceptible gain. The resolution that was passed was also less cautious. Lenin and his wife seemed to have been encouraged, or maybe they were whistling to keep up their spirits. Here is the key passage of the resolution.
It is obvious that revolutionary mass action during the war can only lead to the transformation of the imperialist war into civil war for socialism. The struggle for a durable peace can only take the form of a struggle for realization of socialism.
To prove that caution was in order, 3 German officers and 32 privates were executed the following month for distributing copies of these sentiments in the German trenches. The first clear call of king and country had now faded. No one would any longer be in doubt as to what the war was like. But the protesting minority remained still infinitely small. The great discovery of World War I was not of the weakness of the old ruling structure, of the traditional ruling classes and the new capitalist power. The discovery was of its almost incredible strength. It was still showing that it could command millions of people to their death without a murmur, and more often than not, with enthusiasm. To liberate all of France in 1944 cost all of the Allied armies about 40,000 dead. Here on these fields in 1916, British and French deaths were an estimated 200,000. At Verdun, in that same year, French and German soldiers to the number of 270,000 were killed.